The radio is open to static and breath. Indigo 6 pulls in air like gravel, forces out words from a troops in contact call, and the line phrase. Multiple wounded reaches the net, then the transmission shears away. Slate 12 waits like a narrow box of echoes. Wind knifes along the stone and throws back every sound. Air bends in the turns and makes flight into a bet that punishes the confident and the slow. Dust hovers over broken ledges where men hold their breath to save it. The canyon swallows syllables and returns only pressure. The cut signal leaves behind a silence that feels heavier than gunfire. Inside the command tent, light from screens washes a row of pinned maps. Staff Sergeant Jake Turner plays the fragment again and keeps his face plain while the headset crackles. Markers squeak as hands hover over a red ring on the grid. Colonel Daniel Rhodes studies the circle without blinking. He asks for status in a voice that matches the room and lets the question carry the weight. Is Indigo still breathing lands like a stone in still water? Turner nods and cues the loop while the ops floor holds steady. No one debates risk or blame. The map table turns a crossroads, and the air between breaths decides who moves first. Midday turns Camp Blackwell into a mirage that smells like fuel and hot rubber. Heat shivers over the runway while auxiliary power units hum a steady note behind parked aircraft. Crews move with the same rhythm they used yesterday and the day before. Chocks lift, marshallers guide, and tow bars click into place without wasted motion. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman sits near Hangar 4, on the safe side of a painted restricted bay line. The line holds her in place as surely as any order, and the habit keeps her still. Her A-10C waits under a tarp with a maintenance entry that reads, "Operational restrictions pending evaluation." The note has lived in the system for 2 years, and no one expects it to close today. Rumors drift between toolboxes and coffee breaks, the way dust rides the wind. People mention a pilot who once cleared Slate 12 and then disappeared into paperwork, but the talk stays soft and moves on. Kara ignores the drift and works the things she can hold. A battered tablet shows METAR and TAF while she checks winds aloft and pressure trends that turn narrow canyons into traps for heavy wings. She stands and walks the length of the building with flight gloves on her hands. The leather eases the mind while the sun loads the concrete with heat and the air tastes like JP8. Ground crew roll past with a forklift and a stack of wheel chocks. The base sounds like routine and looks like routine, which is why the tension hides so well inside it. A tarp edge flutters against her jet and settles again. A mechanic passes without slowing and drops a single name that lands like a change in weather. Slate 12 carries across the ramp and nudges a choice she has already made. Screens glow inside the command tent and wash color over pinned maps and satellite imagery. Headsets murmur with a low crackle that never stops. Marker tips squeak across laminated plastic as hands hover and commit. Captain Maya Brooks confirms the grid for Slate 12 with a steady voice and a steady finger. First Lieutenant Ethan Cole redraws a clean red circle that tightens until no one can pretend the threat sits anywhere else. The lines look simple and carry a weight that is not. Staff Sergeant Jake Turner cues the recorder and plays the fractured transmission again. Breath, static, and a clipped report of wounded roll across the table like a slow metronome. Colonel Daniel Rhodes watches the circle and does not chase blame. He asks for status on Indigo with the calm of someone who understands what permission sounds like in a room like this. The question still breathing settles into every headset and stays there. Brooks answers with the only history that matters. One pilot has survived Slate 12 before, Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman, call sign Ghost 03, currently grounded under operational restrictions pending evaluation. The facts sit on the table without drama while eyes flicker between the map and the feed. Turner resets the loop and the room accepts the hard truth that risk is not the same as indifference. Radio discipline holds. Desks stay neat, and the air tastes like paper and dust because order is how you keep fear from spreading. Footsteps fade into the canvas walls and the net hums in a narrow band. No one raises a voice. No one writes a speech for a moment that does not need one. The map table becomes the hinge between waiting and moving. A single option hangs there, quiet and heavy, like the next breath before a step. The crossroads is not a road at all. It is a circle on a sheet of plastic that now feels alive. The heat sits at the edge of noon when a mechanic drifts past Hangar 4 and says Slate 12 like changing weather. The word moves across the ramp and settles into the hum of auxiliary power units and the smell of JP-8. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman stands from the dented bench and steps over the painted restricted bay line. 2 years of orders live in that stripe, yet her boot prints cross it without noise. She walks straight to the A-10C and takes the tarp in both hands. Fabric slides and snaps as it comes free, leaving a scarred but serviceable airframe that still looks ready to work. Master Sergeant Rick Alvarez is already there with a rag over one shoulder. He does not block her path and he does not waste words, only lays out what matters in maintenance terms that everyone understands. Fuel sits low, and the numbers will not buy much loiter. Hydraulics are touchy, the missile warning system is degraded, the countermeasure system is manual only, and the flares left on board will not last long. Kara asks if the jet can fly and waits for the answer without blinking. Alvarez tells her it can take off, and that landing remains a problem they do not have to solve yet. Around them, tools pause in midair and forklifts slow without meaning to. Airmen trade quiet looks that are not ceremony and not permission, only the kind of consent that forms when professionals face a necessary risk. Kara plants a boot on the ladder and climbs with steady hands inside worn flight gloves. Metal rungs click under weight, and the smell of tire rubber rises from the ramp, while the decision they all heard in the air finds its shape in motion. Battery on. Avionics wake, and the cockpit fills with a low glow. The auxiliary power unit winds up with a clean whine that settles into a steady hum. Caution and advisory lights bloom, then most of them fade on the scan. She checks the panel once more and leaves what matters in her sightline. Left engine to idle. RPM rises. EGT stabilizes. Oil pressure climbs into the green. Right engine follows the same arc until both fans thrum together. Master arm stays safe while she runs the flight controls. Stick and rudder move smooth. SAS is on, and trim sets to a clean takeoff bias. Hydraulics show HYDA and HYDB in the green. The oxygen system breathes into her mask with a crisp hiss, and the flow needle answers. Radios come alive on the correct nets with presets loaded. Navigation is already aligned for a quick launch. Waypoints stack toward the canyon. She calls up the countermeasures page and marks the reality. The missile warning system is degraded. The countermeasure system allows manual dispense, so she programs a simple flare burst she can punch when needed. Outside, the crew chief walks a last hands and eyes inspection along panels and pylons. The canopy comes down and seals with a clean thud, and a familiar thumbs up closes the loop at the ladder. She glances at fuel and power, then sets lights and kneeboard notes within reach. The checklist ends not with drama, but with a breath that steadies hands already steady. The nose tracks to the hold line as ground traffic rolls by in measured beats. She keys the mic and requests taxi from ground as Ghost 03, voice, level, and brief, ready to roll in the rhythm of a busy flight line. Heat shimmers over the flight line as Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman finishes her checks. She keys the radio and requests taxi as Ghost 03 with clean, standard phraseology. The tower answers with a firm hold position and not cleared instruction. No names. Only the call sign and the boundary she is expected to respect. Kara releases the brakes and eases forward. She states mission critical in concise language and keeps the jet rolling with measured steering and a steady hand. On the ops floor in the command tent, a staff officer warns that this path leads to a court-martial. The room stays level, headsets alive, but voices calm. Colonel Daniel Rhodes asks if Indigo is still breathing. The answer is yes, and he moves on it without ceremony. He directs launch for 2 MH-47G Chinooks from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. The rescue will flow if Ghost 03 opens the corridor. The tower maintains air traffic control authority. The commander carries the operational risk decision. Each roll holds its lane while the clock presses down on both. Taxi lights blink across concrete as the A-10C turns to the active. Nose wheel centers on the line, engines steady, and the choice resolves into motion. Kara holds the brakes and brings the power up to a clean set. Time feels like it has taken a side, and the runway waits for the next breath. Gravel chews at elbows and knees on the floor of Slate 12. Indigo 6 holds a tight line behind broken stone. The canyon presses sound back into their teeth. Senior Chief Logan Price keeps time with small hand signals. He moves men by inches and saves words for when they matter. Calm becomes armor. Chief Tyler Vance lies behind a cracked optic on a taped tripod. He owns the radio and the fire's net as the team JTAC. He watches angles, not noise. Vance marks ridgelines, spurs, and a split boulder for a future talk on. He builds a clean mental picture while staying below the skyline. The map lives in his head. HM2 Drew Keller works casualty care under fire. He packs hemostatic gauze, checks airway, and clamps bleeding with pressure. Tourniquets rotate on a short cycle to save limbs. Dust grinds into gloves and seals. It turns tape slick and makes gauze taste like grit. Keller keeps moving because stillness steals time. Magazines sit light in the pouches. Rounds are counted by touch, not by hope. Fire goes out in disciplined pairs from fractured cover. The ridgelines control the angles above. Every shift draws a probing burst that chips the rock. No one lifts higher than the line of sight they need. Radio discipline holds like a rule you can feel. Transmissions stay short and necessary. Silence does more work than volume. Vance notes that some guns stare past the canyon floor. Fields of fire point toward an air corridor, not the ground fight. A pattern forms where rotors would fly. He sketches headings in dirt with a gloved finger. Reference points stack for correlation when close air support arrives. He keeps the net quiet and ready. Price sets a rally point in shadow near scrub and stone. Water passes hand to hand and safeties click with small checks. They save strength for a move the moment a safe corridor opens. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman runs the low route with the A-10C pressed under the ridgelines. Terrain masking turns the jet into a moving shadow that only the stone can see. She trims the aircraft until the nose rides level and light. SAS holds the small corrections while her hands make the ones that matter. A slight tremor taps the stabilizer in a bend she remembers. She adds a finger of trim and a thumb of throttle to keep energy in the bank. Non-critical tones go quiet so the headset carries only what she needs. Essential cautions: stay armed, and the cockpit settles into a narrow band of sound. Ground effect builds as the floor rises toward the wings. The jet floats on a cushion of compressed air, and she guards it with gentle pressure on the stick. Throttle travel stays smooth to keep the fans spooled. She nudges power up before the wind takes it and slides it back when the air gives some back. The controls talk through pressure, not words. A small push in the left grip, a breath on the right pedal, and the nose walks the center of the slot. Energy management replaces drama. She holds speed that lets the jet turn without taking more altitude than the canyon will give. The headset hum folds into the airframe thrum. Checklists fade behind the rhythm of scan, horizon, and the next corner. This is not a show for spectators. It is a craft that lives in muscle memory and the quiet map her hands keep tracing. Rocks lean closer in the narrows, and the floor turns from flat to broken. She keeps the wings level until the space opens enough to ask for a turn. The canyon threshold rises ahead like a lip on a cup. The jet stays steady and low, and she breathes with the rock to make the first move. Indigo 6's JTAC, Chief Tyler Vance, makes first contact with the inbound A-10C. The radio net tightens, and the canyon's noise falls behind the cadence of procedure. Vance declares Type 2, control with troops in contact, and danger close. He sets a final attack heading between 090 and 120 to keep friendlies protected by terrain. He issues a clean 9-line with essentials only. Location grid is confirmed. Mark is a talk-on that ties a ridgeline to a broken boulder cut by a narrow spur. Friendlies are 200+ meters south of the mark, low on the canyon floor. Egress is east, then south, to remain below the crest and avoid known fires. Line 6 restrictions are stated for danger close and for no fire west of the spur. Vance keeps the net calm and clear to prevent overlap with monitoring stations. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman reads back the mandatory lines, steady and brief. She confirms weapons, attack geometry, and acknowledges danger close in plain language. Correlation is achieved on the talk, on with positive identification. The JTAC clears hot after confirming the mark and the friendly location. Kara rolls in from the assigned heading and sets the pipper where the talk on lives. The GAU 8/A speaks in short, controlled bursts to avoid gun gas issues. She maintains a friendly offset greater than 200 meters and pulls to egress on the briefed line. Dust lifts from the ridgeline and the return fire stutters, then thins. Her battle damage assessment is concise. Multiple positions destroyed on the ridge. 2 remaining threats noted near the spur with limited observation on the floor. Deconfliction is restated for altitude blocks and timing. Rotary assets will have a clean window when the corridor opens and the stack shifts. The net goes quiet except for breathing and small corrections. Indigo 6 feels the fight tilt as the high ground loosens its grip and the dust begins to settle. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman slews the targeting pod across South Ridge and freezes on shapes that do not belong to rock. Covered launch rails sit under netting, with thermal signatures tucked behind scrub and stone. Their fields of fire look past the canyon floor and watch the air where rotors must pass. She calls a shift of effort to South Ridge with clean brevity and keeps the net tight. The plan pivots to protect the corridor the incoming MH-47G Chinooks of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment will need. Terrain masking remains the rule, but the attack axis must clear the ridgeline eyes. Inside the command tent, Captain Maya Brooks reads the pattern for what it is and marks short-range air defense teams that likely carry infrared-guided systems. First Lieutenant Ethan Cole redraws ingress and egress arrows for the Night Stalkers so deconfliction holds when the stack moves. Colonel Daniel Rhodes accepts the change and aligns support without breaking the calm of the room. Kara banks and sets spacing that will open a clean run. The pod steadies on the far launcher while she checks slant range and egress to the east. The map tilts toward a single plan, and the corridor begins to take shape for the birds that are coming. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman shifts from suppression to precision. The targeting pod settles on South Ridge, where hard sights still threaten the corridor. Positive identification holds steady through heat and shadow. Sensor queuing pushes a clean sensor point of interest to the weapons page. She builds a stable attack geometry with safe slant range and room to egress east. The jet rides smooth and low. An AGM-65 Maverick comes off the rail on the hard site. The missile tracks clean and impacts where the rails meet rock. Fire rolls and then drops as debris settles. She slews to the adjacent positions that could reconstitute the threat. Guided, 70mm rockets with APKWS ripple in short pairs. Impacts stitch the berms without pushing danger toward friendlies. Fuel trends low and the clock tightens. The missile warning system is degraded and the countermeasure system is manual only. She sets a simple manual program and keeps to a narrow timeline. The pod shows bodies leaving the blast zone and equipment cooling fast. She holds slant range and keeps the nose pointed to the safe egress. Terrain masking waits at the turn. Battle damage assessment goes out concise and complete. Primary launcher destroyed. Secondary positions degraded. Corridor threat reduced with 2 small emitters possible near the southern spur. Deconfliction stays clear for altitude blocks and timing. The stack adjusts so the Night Stalkers can enter with a clean window. Radios stay calm and brief. She takes one more look through the glass to confirm the ridge is quiet. No new heat blooms in the corridor, and dust lifts from the crest in slow sheets. The plan begins to hold. The line into Slate 12 stops looking like a dare and starts looking like a door. The rescue finally has room to come through. An infrared-guided missile kicks off from a pocket on the south ridge. It hunts heat and swings toward the second MH-47G Chinook, holding near the mouth of Slate 12. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman rolls the A-10C across its path. Alarms fire in the headset for missile launch and engine strain. The missile warning system is degraded, and the countermeasure system is manual only. She selects a simple manual program and keeps the throttle where the fans stay responsive. The jet rides at canyon floor height with terrain masking. Ground effect builds and turns the air into a thin cushion. Small pressures on stick and rudder keep the nose settled in the slot. Wind slides across the ridgeline and pushes from the right. She shades in a touch of trim to hold level and guards the power so the spool never sags. The headset carries only the tones she needs. The canyon ahead hardens into a sheer wall. She holds the line through swirling dust and shadow and lets the distance close. Timing becomes the weapon she trusts most. Flares punch out by hand in measured bursts. The seeker looks for a hotter, nearer source and commits to the A-10C. The Chinook drops out of the cone and stays on profile. She drags the missile toward stone and waits to the last practical moment. Then she pulls through the bend the way the canyon demands, not with a show, but with a clean, loaded turn. The warhead cannot match the change inside the rock face and detonates into stone. Blast slaps the airframe and rolls the jet a quarter turn. Smoke coughs from the left engine and the stabilizer vibrates. The A-10C answers the stick with heavy honesty and stays controllable. In the command tent, Colonel Daniel Rhodes urges a break-off, while the ops floor holds its discipline. Headsets crackle, and the map waits for a change that does not come. The room stays ready for either choice. Back in the cockpit, she steadies the wings and takes stock. Fuel trends low. CMS remains manual. She settles into a protective orbit and keeps terrain masking between threats and the helicopters that will come. Horizon levels and the sky opens just enough to matter. The jet carries fresh scars but holds the line. The rescue still has a path forward. 2 MH-47G Chinooks nose into the mouth of Slate 12. Rotor wash lifts dust into a moving wall that eats the horizon. The canyon becomes a tunnel of sound. Indigo 6 moves as one toward the landing zone. Senior Chief Logan Price sets movement and security with small signals. The team wastes nothing and stays low. Chief Tyler Vance manages deconfliction as the Joint Terminal Attack Controller. He holds a clean stack and protects a timing block for rotary. Altitude separation keeps the layers from crossing. Lieutenant Colonel Kara Whitman orbits wide in the A-10C. She watches the ridges and the approach lines at the same time. The corridor stays under her hand. Short-range fire tests the edge of the landing zone. Kara rolls and uses brief GAU 8/A bursts. Danger close limits are honored with a friendly offset greater than 200 meters. The first Chinook settles into the zone with a heavy step. HM2 Drew Keller sequences the wounded by urgency and lift. He calls head count and keeps lanes clear. Price controls the perimeter while rotors beat the air flat. Weapons stay on safe until the line turns. Then fire returns in short, disciplined cuts. Vance keeps the net clean. He calls ingress and egress for the helicopters and confirms the stack for fixed wing. Deconfliction holds while dust hides everyone from everyone else. The second Chinook drops in as the first lifts. Kara clips a last thread on the ridgeline and resets her orbit. She reports corridor status as green for exit. Load complete passes across the radios with simple words. Both Chinooks climb heavy along the cleared route and turn for egress. Ghost 03 makes one last pass to check the ridge. She remains on station until the aircraft clear the kill box. Fuel trends low, but the mission is intact. She takes the long route home with the valley finally quiet. The return leg runs quiet until the field rises in the canopy. Final is flown low and steady, with a touch of crosswind across the nose. Wheels strike hard and true, and a slight stabilizer offset shows in the roll. She holds aerodynamic braking with the nose high and the boards out. Engines spool uneven as the jet decelerates. Then the nose comes down, and centerline stays under the tires. Fire bottles and ground crew close in at a trot as the airframe settles. She clears the runway and stops on the ramp with the headset calm. Chocks in. Master arms safe. Speed brakes retracted. Oxygen off. Hydraulics checked. And a smoking engine watched while the crew chief scans panels by hand. A quiet black vehicle rolls to a halt near the wingtip. 2 plainclothes professionals step out and guide her to a windowless room with no insignia. The list is brief and precise in its terms. Ignoring a no-fly directive. Unauthorized aircraft use. Restricted airspace penetration and unapproved engagements. Outcomes follow in the same flat cadence. 6 lives extracted. 11 hostile positions neutralized. 2 MH-47G Chinooks preserved. A corridor opened under fire. A small black patch slides across the table and waits between elbows. Storm glass is stitched on it in tight letters. She answers with a single line about already living the worst day and this not being it. They let her go without noise. Back on the ramp, the heat smells like JP8 and metal, and tools rest where hands left them. The line crews keep working because that is how the day keeps its shape. High above, an A-10 makes a single arc and then fades into pale sky. The runway hush returns as if nothing changed. The job sits finished, and the name will not be written down.